The auctioneer's voice echoed across the dusty farmyard as I raised my paddle for the third time. $900 for the grain silo. Going once, going twice. The gavel came down with a satisfying thud. Sold to bidder number 47. I couldn't believe my luck. For less than $1,000, I'd just purchased a 40-foot concrete grain silo that I planned to convert into the most unique tiny home in Nebraska. The structure had been abandoned for over 20 years, standing like a forgotten monument on the old Hartwell farm that was being liquidated after the owner's death. My name is David Chen, and I'm a freelance architect with a passion for repurposing old agricultural buildings. I'd been driving past this farm for months, admiring the silo's solid construction and perfect cylindrical shape. When I heard about the auction, I knew I had to bid. The other bidders seemed more interested in the tractors and livestock equipment. Most people saw the silo as an expensive demolition project, but I saw potential. With some creative engineering, it could become an incredible living space with panoramic views of the surrounding countryside. After the auction, I walked around my new purchase, taking measurements and planning the renovation. The concrete was in excellent condition despite its age, with only minor surface weathering. The original grain chutes and conveyor systems were still intact, though covered in decades of dust and rust. The seller, an elderly lawyer handling the estate, handed me the keys to the property gate and a folder of documents. "Congratulations on your purchase, Mr. Chen. The silo's been sealed since 1998 when old Hartwell stopped farming. You're getting a piece of history there." As I drove home that evening, I couldn't wait to start the renovation project that would transform this agricultural relic into my dream home. Chapter 2. First Steps Inside. 300 words. 3 weeks later, I returned with a crew of contractors and all the equipment needed to begin the conversion. The silo stood majestically against the morning sky, its concrete surface gleaming in the early sunlight. I'd spent those weeks obtaining permits, designing the renovation plans, and arranging for utilities to be connected. My contractor, Mike Rodriguez, had worked on several of my unconventional projects before. He stood at the base of the silo, hands on his hips, studying the structure with professional interest. "This is definitely a first for me, Dave, but the bones are solid. This thing could stand for another century." We started by cutting a proper entrance door at ground level. The original access had been through a small maintenance hatch 20 feet up, which wasn't practical for daily living. As Mike's crew worked on the entrance, I climbed the external ladder to examine the top of the silo. The view from 40 feet up was breathtaking. Rolling farmland stretched to the horizon in every direction, broken only by scattered farmhouses and tree lines marking creek beds. This would be the perfect spot for a rooftop deck. When the new door was finally cut and the debris cleared away, I stepped inside the silo for the first time. The interior was a perfect cylinder, 40 feet in diameter and 35 feet tall. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the opening we'd created, illuminating dust motes that danced in the still air. The space felt cathedral-like in its proportions. The curved concrete walls would provide excellent insulation and create unique acoustic properties. I could already envision spiral staircases, loft bedrooms, and floor-to-ceiling windows that would flood the space with natural light. But as I walked around the perimeter, taking more detailed measurements, I noticed something odd about the floor. Chapter 3. An unusual discovery. 300 words. The concrete floor of the silo wasn't uniform. While most of it appeared to be the original industrial flooring, there was a rectangular section near the center that looked different. The concrete was a slightly different color and texture, as if it had been poured at a different time. I knelt down and ran my hands over the surface. The newer section was about 6 feet by 4 feet, and when I tapped it with my knuckles, it sounded hollow underneath. Mike came over to investigate when he saw me examining the floor so intently. "That's definitely a different pour," he confirmed, tapping the area with a hammer. "Sounds like there's a void underneath. Maybe an old maintenance access or storage area." We brought in a concrete scanner, a device that uses ground-penetrating radar to see beneath surfaces. The results were fascinating. There was definitely a hollow space about 3 feet below the surface, and it appeared to be quite large, possibly a room or chamber. Could be an old root cellar or storm shelter. Mike suggested. Farmers used to build those into silos sometimes for extra storage. But something about the placement and construction didn't seem right for a typical farm storage area. The concrete patch was too carefully finished, too deliberately concealed. It looked more like someone had intentionally sealed something beneath the floor. I made the decision to investigate further. We rented a small jackhammer and carefully broke through the newer concrete. As the chunks fell away, we could see wooden planks underneath, the top of what appeared to be a wooden crate or box. The discovery sent a thrill of excitement through me. I'd expected to find old farm equipment, or maybe some forgotten storage containers, but this looked deliberate, purposeful, as if someone had hidden something important beneath the silo floor. Chapter 4. Breaking Through. 300 words. It took most of the afternoon to carefully remove enough concrete to expose the wooden structure beneath. What we found was a large wooden crate, roughly the size of a coffin, sealed with heavy metal bands, and covered with a tarp that had somehow survived decades underground. Mike and I exchanged glances as we cleared away the last of the concrete debris. The crate was clearly old, but it had been protected from the elements by its concrete tomb. The wood was still solid, and the metal bands showed only surface rust. "Should we call the police?" Mike asked. "I mean, what if there's, I understood his concern, but something about the careful construction and placement suggested this wasn't anything sinister. "Let's see if we can open it first. If it's anything suspicious, we'll call the authorities immediately." The metal bands were secured with old-fashioned padlocks that had corroded over the years. A few careful strikes with a hammer and chisel broke them free. As I lifted the heavy wooden lid, the hinges creaked in protest, but they held. Inside, wrapped in multiple layers of oiled canvas and plastic sheeting, were dozens of items that took my breath away. The first thing I saw was a leather portfolio tied with string. Beneath that were what appeared to be paintings, wrapped individually in protective cloth. My hands trembled as I carefully lifted out the portfolio and untied the string. Inside were documents, photographs, and what looked like certificates or official papers. The top document was a letter, written in elegant handwriting on expensive stationery. "To whoever finds this collection," it began, "my name is Eleanor Hartwell, and I am the daughter of the man who built this silo. What you have discovered represents a lifetime of collecting and a family secret that I could never reveal while I was alive." Chapter 5. Eleanor's Secret. 300 words. I sat on the edge of the excavated hole, reading Eleanor's letter by the light of our work lamps as evening approached. Mike had gone to get us coffee, giving me a moment alone with this incredible discovery. The letter continued. "My father, Thomas Hartwell, was not just a farmer. During the 1940s and 1950s, he was also an art dealer who specialized in helping European families recover artwork stolen by the Nazis during World War II. Much of his work was done quietly, without publicity, because many of the families he helped were still in danger." My heart raced as I read on. Eleanor explained that her father had accumulated a significant collection of recovered artwork over the years. Some pieces were returned to their rightful owners, but others remained unclaimed when families couldn't be located or had perished in the war. Rather than profit from these tragic circumstances, my father decided to preserve the collection until a time when it could be properly handled. He built this secret chamber beneath the silo in 1955, believing it would be the safest place on the farm. The letter detailed how Thomas had died suddenly in 1962, taking the secret of the hidden collection with him. Eleanor had known about it, but was afraid to reveal it during her lifetime, fearing legal complications and unwanted attention. "I never married and have no children," the letter concluded. "I've spent my life wondering what should become of this collection. Perhaps whoever finds it will have the wisdom and resources to ensure these pieces find their way to museums or rightful heirs, where they can be appreciated rather than hidden." I carefully set the letter aside and began examining the wrapped paintings. Even through the protective cloth, I could see the quality of the frames and the careful way everything had been preserved. Chapter 6. Priceless Treasures. 300 words. Over the next several hours, Mike and I carefully removed each item from the crate and documented everything with photographs. What we found was beyond anything I could have imagined. There were 17 paintings in total, ranging from small portraits to medium-sized landscapes. Even to my untrained eye, they appeared to be museum-quality pieces. The brushwork was exquisite, the colors still vibrant despite their age. One painting in particular caught my attention, a beautiful landscape signed C. Monet in the lower right corner. I'd seen enough art books to recognize the style, but I hardly dared believe it could be authentic. Along with the paintings were dozens of documents, provenance records, insurance valuations from the 1950s, and correspondence between Thomas Hartwell and various art recovery organizations. There were also photographs showing some of the paintings hanging in European homes before the war. The most shocking discovery was a detailed inventory list in Thomas's handwriting with estimated values from 1955. Even accounting for inflation, the numbers were staggering. The collection was potentially worth millions of dollars. But beyond the monetary value, these pieces represented something far more important. They were cultural treasures that had been saved from destruction, preserved by a farmer who understood their significance. Mike whistled softly as he examined one of the smaller paintings. "Dave, do you realize what you've found here? This isn't just valuable, it's historically significant." I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. Eleanor had been right to hide this collection, but now it was my burden to decide what to do with it. Among the documents was a list of art recovery organizations and museums that Thomas had worked with. Many of them still existed, and I realized that my first step should be to contact experts who could properly authenticate and evaluate the collection. Chapter 7. Expert Authentication. 300 words. The next morning, I called Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a professor of art history at the University of Nebraska who specialized in stolen and recovered artwork. I'd found her name in several of the documents Thomas had preserved, and remarkably, she was still active in the field despite being in her 70s. When I explained what I'd found, there was a long silence on the phone. "Mr. Chen, I need to see this collection immediately. If what you're describing is authentic, you may have made one of the most significant art recovery discoveries in decades." Dr. Mitchell arrived that afternoon with 2 assistants and a van full of equipment for properly examining artwork. She was a small, energetic woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in every detail. Her reaction when she saw the first painting was everything I needed to know about the collection's authenticity. "My God!" she whispered, carefully examining the Monet landscape with a magnifying glass. "This is Morning Light at Giverny, painted in 1919. It was stolen from a private collection in Paris in 1943 and has been missing ever since." Over the next several hours, Dr. Mitchell and her team examined each piece. Their excitement grew with every painting they authenticated. We had works by Monet, Renoir, Degas, and several other masters, all documented as stolen during the war. Thomas Hartwell was a remarkable man, Dr. Mitchell explained as she photographed the provenance documents. He worked with our organization in the 1950s, helping to reunite families with their stolen artwork. But I had no idea he was preserving pieces like these. She estimated the collection's value at between $15 and $20 million, but emphasized that the historical and cultural significance was immeasurable. "These pieces belong in museums," she said firmly. "They need to be seen, studied, and appreciated by the public." Chapter 8. Moral Dilemmas. 300 words. That evening, I sat alone in the silo, surrounded by priceless artwork and wrestling with the most difficult decision of my life. Legally, the collection was mine. I'd purchased the silo and everything in it. But morally, the situation was far more complex. Dr. Mitchell had explained that some of the pieces might still have living heirs who could claim ownership. Others had been donated to museums that were destroyed during the war, making their legal status unclear. The process of determining rightful ownership could take years and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. I thought about Eleanor's letter and her father's intentions. Thomas Hartwell had preserved these pieces not for profit, but because he believed they deserved to be protected and eventually displayed where people could appreciate them. I also thought about my own situation. I was a freelance architect, living paycheck to paycheck, and this discovery could set me up for life. Even if I donated most of the collection, keeping just 1 or 2 pieces would solve all my financial problems. But as I looked at the beautiful Monet landscape, I realized that some things were more important than money. These paintings had survived war, theft, and decades of hiding. They deserved better than to become someone's private investment. I made my decision that night, sitting on the concrete floor of the silo where Thomas Hartwell had hidden his treasures 70 years earlier. The next morning, I called Dr. Mitchell and told her I wanted to donate the entire collection to a consortium of museums with the understanding that they would work together to determine proper ownership and ensure the pieces were displayed publicly. "That's an incredibly generous decision, Mr. Chen," she said. "But are you sure? This collection could make you very wealthy." "I'm sure," I replied. "This is what Thomas and Eleanor would have wanted." Chapter 9. Media Sensation. 300 words. Word of the discovery spread quickly through the art world, and within days, reporters from around the country were calling for interviews. The story of a grain silo hiding millions of dollars in stolen Nazi art captured the public imagination. I found myself thrust into a spotlight I'd never wanted. News crews set up outside the silo, and my phone rang constantly with requests for interviews. The story made national headlines. Architect discovers $20 million art collection in Nebraska grain silo. Dr. Mitchell helped me navigate the media attention, serving as a spokesperson for the technical aspects of the discovery while I focused on Thomas and Eleanor's story. We emphasized that this wasn't about the money, but about preserving cultural heritage and honoring the memory of a farmer who had risked everything to save these treasures. The most moving interview was with a reporter from PBS who specialized in stories about art recovery. As we stood inside the silo, surrounded by the carefully arranged paintings, I told Thomas's story and read excerpts from Eleanor's letter. "What strikes me most about this discovery," the reporter said, "is that it shows how ordinary people can become heroes in extraordinary circumstances. Thomas Hartwell was just a farmer, but he understood the importance of preserving culture and history." The story resonated with people around the world. I received hundreds of letters and emails from viewers who were moved by the tale of the farmer who had secretly saved priceless artwork. Many shared their own family stories about the war and the importance of preserving history, but the most meaningful response came from an unexpected source. 3 weeks after the story aired, I received a phone call from a woman in France who had been searching for her grandmother's stolen paintings for over 30 years. "I believe you may have found my family's Renoir," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Chapter 10. Reuniting Families. 300 words. Marie Dubois flew from Paris to Nebraska the following week, carrying a folder of documents that proved her grandmother's ownership of one of the Renoir paintings in the collection. Her grandmother, Sophie Dubois, had been a prominent art collector in Paris before the war. "The Nazis came to our house in 1943, Marie explained as we sat in the silo, the Renoir portrait hanging on a temporary easel between us. "They took everything, paintings, furniture, jewelry. My grandmother never saw any of it again." The painting was a portrait of a young woman in a blue dress, painted in 1895. Marie showed me photographs of it hanging in her grandmother's salon, taken just months before the Nazi raid. "My grandmother died in 1987, still hoping that someday her paintings would be found," Marie said, tears streaming down her face. She would have been so grateful to know that someone like Thomas Hartwell was protecting them. Dr. Mitchell had verified Marie's claim through extensive documentation and genealogical research. There was no doubt that the painting belonged to her family. "I want to donate it to the Musée d'Orsay in my grandmother's memory," Marie announced. "She always said that art should be shared, not hidden away in private collections." Over the following months, similar reunions took place with other families. A Degas sketch was returned to the descendants of a Belgian collector. A small Monet was claimed by a Jewish family from Amsterdam, whose entire collection had been looted. Each reunion was emotional and meaningful, but they also reinforced my decision to donate the collection rather than profit from it. These weren't just valuable objects, they were family heirlooms, cultural treasures, and symbols of survival against impossible odds. The process of authenticating claims and arranging transfers took nearly a year, but it was the most rewarding work I'd ever done. Chapter 11. The Museum Exhibition. 300 words. 18 months after the discovery, the remaining pieces from Thomas Hartwell's collection went on display in a special exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. The show was titled Hidden Treasures: Art Saved from the Shadows, and it told the complete story of the collection's journey from European homes to a Nebraska grain silo. I attended the opening reception, still amazed by the path my life had taken since that $900 auction bid. The exhibition was beautifully curated, with each painting accompanied by detailed information about its history, theft, and recovery. The centerpiece was the Monet landscape that had first taken my breath away in the silo. It was displayed alongside photographs of Thomas Hartwell, excerpts from Eleanor's letter, and even pictures of the silo itself. This exhibition represents more than just recovered artwork, the museum director said during his opening remarks. It's a testament to the power of ordinary people to preserve extraordinary things and a reminder that cultural heritage belongs to all of humanity. The exhibition was a tremendous success, drawing record crowds and generating millions of dollars in donations for art recovery organizations. Several of the pieces were subsequently acquired by major museums, ensuring they would be preserved and displayed for future generations. But the most meaningful moment came when I met Dr. Elizabeth Hoffman, a Holocaust survivor who had worked with Thomas Hartwell in the 1950s. Thomas was a quiet hero, she told me, her eyes bright with memory. He never sought recognition for what he did, but he saved so much more than just paintings. He saved pieces of our culture, our history, our souls. As I walked through the exhibition, seeing the paintings displayed in their full glory, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Thomas and Eleanor's secret was finally revealed, and their legacy would live on forever. Chapter 12. Life Transformed. 300 words. The discovery in the grain silo changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. While I didn't profit financially from the artwork, the experience opened doors I never knew existed. Museums and collectors began hiring me to design exhibition spaces and storage facilities for valuable collections. I also became involved with several art recovery organizations, using my architectural skills to help design secure storage systems for recovered artwork. The work was meaningful and well paid, allowing me to build a successful practice specializing in cultural preservation projects. But perhaps the most significant change was personal. The media attention from the discovery had brought me into contact with Dr. Rebecca Walsh, a curator at the Art Institute of Chicago, who had been following the story. Our professional relationship had gradually developed into something deeper. Rebecca understood my passion for preserving history and shared my belief that cultural treasures should be accessible to the public. We were married in a small ceremony held, appropriately enough, inside the renovated grain silo. I had completed the conversion as originally planned, turning the space into a unique home that honored its agricultural heritage while serving as a comfortable living space. The spot where I'd found the hidden collection was marked with a simple plaque commemorating Thomas and Eleanor Hartwell. The silo had become a pilgrimage site of sorts for people interested in art recovery and World War II history. I regularly gave tours to school groups and researchers, sharing the story of the farmer who had risked everything to save priceless artwork. "Do you ever regret not keeping any of the paintings?" visitors often asked. The answer was always the same: never. Those pieces needed to be seen by the world, not hidden away in someone's private collection. Thomas Hartwell understood that, and so do I. Chapter 13. Legacy Continues. 300 words. 5 years have passed since I bought that grain silo for $900, and the ripple effects of the discovery continue to spread. The Thomas Hartwell Foundation, established with proceeds from the museum exhibition, has helped recover and return dozens of stolen artworks to their rightful owners or appropriate museums. Rebecca and I now have a daughter, Emma, who loves hearing the story of the hidden treasures beneath the silo floor. At 3 years old, she's already showing an interest in art and history, often asking to visit the museums where Daddy's paintings are displayed. The grain silo remains our home, a constant reminder of how a simple decision can change everything. I've added a small museum room where I display copies of the original paintings, along with documentation of their journey from theft to recovery. Visitors from around the world still come to see where the collection was hidden. Last month, I received a letter from a young art student in Germany who had been inspired by Thomas Hartwell's story to pursue a career in art recovery. She wrote, "Your discovery showed me that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences in preserving our cultural heritage. That letter reminded me why I made the decision to donate the collection rather than profit from it. The true value of Thomas Hartwell's treasure wasn't measured in dollars, but in the lives it touched, the families it reunited, and the history it preserved. As I write this, sitting in my office in the converted silo, I can see the exact spot where I found Eleanor's letter. Sometimes I imagine Thomas Hartwell looking down, satisfied that his secret collection finally found its way into the light. The grain silo that cost me $900 gave me something worth far more than money. It gave me purpose, love, and a story that will last forever. Thank you so much for listening to this incredible story about hidden treasures, family secrets, and the courage to do what's right even when it costs you everything. I hope it reminded you that sometimes the most valuable discoveries aren't the ones that make us rich, but the ones that connect us to something larger than ourselves. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Please let me know what part of the world you're listening from, and if you've ever made an unexpected discovery that changed your life. Have you found anything surprising in old buildings, storage units, or family estates? Your stories inspire the content I create. If you enjoyed this tale of art, history, and moral courage, please consider subscribing to the channel for more stories about unexpected discoveries, family mysteries, and the extraordinary things that can happen when we follow our curiosity. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story, and thank you again for being part of our storytelling community. Until next time, remember that treasure isn't always gold and silver. Sometimes it's the opportunity to preserve something beautiful for future generations, and the satisfaction of knowing you made the right choice when it mattered most.